The HOA security guys had smashed my mailbox 5 times in just half a year. Every time I fixed it, they'd roll up in their trucks, laughing like it was a sport, and destroy it all over again. The harassment was escalating, the fines were piling up, and it felt like they were determined to break me. That's when I decided it was time to build one last mailbox, something different, something that would put an end to this war once and for all. From the outside, it looked like a normal rural mailbox. Nothing special, nothing suspicious. But when they came back with their biggest truck yet, they ran into a surprise they never saw coming. Before I tell you what happened, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Bruce Hayes. I run a modest ranch just outside Austin, Texas. Nothing fancy, just me, a flock of chickens, a vegetable garden, and a dream of making an honest living from the land. I'd been doing well enough, selling eggs and organic produce at the local farmer's market. Life was simple, peaceful. At least it was until somebody decided my mailbox needed to be destroyed. The first time, I figured it was kids being reckless, teenagers with nothing better to do than smash country mailboxes with baseball bats. It cost me about $150 to replace, and I lost nearly $300 in business that week since customers couldn't get their delivery confirmations. Frustrating, but I chalked it up to bad luck and filed a report with the county sheriff. The deputy was sympathetic, but honest. Without witnesses or video proof, there wasn't much they could do. Mailbox number 2 lasted 3 weeks before it was reduced to splintered wood and twisted metal across my driveway. This time I tried to go through insurance, hoping at least for some coverage. The adjuster glanced over the file and shook her head. 2 claims in 2 months suggests negligence. She told me, "We can't cover preventable incidents." Preventable? Unless I built a fortress around the thing. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. By the time the 3rd mailbox got demolished, I was unraveling. Between replacements and lost business, I was bleeding money of $450 on rebuilds, plus about $300 a week in missed deliveries. Customers were complaining, and my reputation at the farmer's market was taking a hit. I even reached out to the USPS postal inspector, figuring the federal government would care about repeated destruction of mailboxes. No luck. They told me without hard evidence of intent or a clear pattern, it wasn't a federal crime. That's when Madison Cross entered the picture. I was sweeping up the wreckage of mailbox number 3 when a pristine SUV pulled into my driveway. Out stepped Madison, who introduced herself as the president of the HOA. She said she wanted to help me with what she called my vandalism problem. I'd never had much to do with the HOA before. I paid my dues, kept my place clean, and minded my business. Madison, though, sounded genuinely concerned, needed talking about neighborhood safety, property values, and how this kind of vandalism could affect the whole community. She asked detailed questions about when the damage happened, my routines, and my deliveries. I was grateful someone was finally taking me seriously, so I answered everything. Looking back, I wish I hadn't. Within a week, Madison brought in a security contractor named Victor Hale. Big guy, drove a truck plastered with HOA security stickers, and carried himself like he meant business. He asked the same sort of questions Madison had and promised more patrols around my property. For the first time, I felt like maybe I'd get some answers, but then things started to feel off. One day, Victor remarked, "Looks like whoever did this knew just where to hit for maximum damage." The strange part, I'd never told him or anyone, really, that the posts were always the primary target. Only my insurance adjuster knew that detail. So how did Victor? The stress was grinding me down. I'm a veteran of 3 tours as an odd specialist. I've lived under fire and come home with my share of scars, including PTSD that I'd managed through ranch work and therapy. But this constant sense of being under attack, in my own home, was tearing open old wounds. A truck backfiring would send me diving for cover. The sound of construction nearby put me in cold sweats. Madison, to her credit, seemed to understand. She'd check in, ask about my well-being, even suggest veteran support resources. I started opening up to her more than I should have. At one point, she even floated the idea of selling my ranch, mentioning there were buyers willing to pay good money if I ever wanted to start fresh somewhere else. Then mailbox number 4 went down. This time I built it stronger, with reinforced posts buried deep. I thought maybe if it looked sturdier, the vandals would move on. 2 days later, it was rubble. The timing couldn't have been worse. I'd mentioned to Madison earlier that week that I was waiting on a seed shipment scheduled for Tuesday. The attack happened Monday night, just in time to disrupt the delivery. That's when the doubts crept in. The timing was too precise. Victor knew too much. Madison's questions were too focused on my weaknesses, not solutions. Still, I told myself these were my neighbors, people volunteering their time for the community. But then one question wouldn't leave my mind. How did they know about the Tuesday delivery? The thing was, I'd lied. The shipment wasn't due until Thursday. Call it paranoia, or call it training, but I realized I'd set a trap without meaning to. Sure enough, they struck Monday night, a perfectly placed to ruin a delivery that didn't exist. That was all the proof I needed, so I decided to run another test. The next time Madison stopped by, I casually mentioned that a shipment of expensive chicken feed was arriving Saturday morning, one I'd need to sign for personally. I told Madison the shipment was worth more than $500 and that I couldn't risk losing it. She nodded with sympathy, giving me all the right reassurances, promising she hoped this time things would go smoothly. That Friday night, I sat in the dark kitchen, every light off, keeping watch on my mailbox through the window. Around 2 in the morning, I saw Victor's truck creeping down my driveway, headlights off. He stepped out, crowbar in hand, and carefully tore my mailbox apart. Not random destruction, the deliberate, calculated strikes meant to ensure no mail would arrive on Saturday morning. Except there was no delivery coming. I had made it up. The realization hit me like a gut punch. This wasn't mischief by bored kids or random vandals. It was my HOA president and her so-called security contractor, deliberately targeting me with the very details I had trusted them with. They weren't solving the problem, they were the problem, and I had been playing their game without even realizing it. But knowing the truth and proving it were two different battles. I didn't have video evidence, only my word. Madison already looked like the helpful neighbor trying to assist a struggling veteran, while I looked like the unstable guy with financial issues and paranoia. Who would believe me over her? Meanwhile, the financial strain was suffocating. Each new mailbox cost me $150 to replace, but the real loss came from business interruptions. No reliable mail meant no delivery confirmations for customers, no checks coming in, no communication with suppliers. Every week I bled another $300, and my savings were vanishing. Madison kept reminding me that selling might be my best way out, to mentioning interested buyers, property values, even recommending real estate agents. And then came the HOA violations. Suddenly, my sturdier mailboxes were aesthetic violations, costing me $750 in fines. My reinforced posts declared safety hazards, another $500. The paperwork always carried Madison's signature, with Victor's notes attached about community enforcement. I started reaching out to other neighbors, hoping I wasn't alone. That's when I met Sam Morgan, a retired county worker living just down the road. Over coffee at his kitchen table, Sam laid out what I had feared. "Son," he said, "this sounds like a squeeze play. Somebody wants your land, and they're making life miserable until you give in and sell cheap." He showed me a stack of public records he'd collected. Victor was being paid $800 a month for security, of far more than the $200 a job like his should cost. "That's not security money," Sam said flatly. "That's payoff money." Sam had dug deep. The HOA was overspending on security, funneling cash directly into Victor's company. Even worse, Madison had been pushing these payments through without proper board approval, claiming emergency authority. To anyone who understood local budgets, the irregularities were obvious. But even with Sam's help, I felt like I was drowning. Law enforcement dismissed it as a civil matter. Insurance refused to cover preventable incidents. The postal inspector said I lacked the proof they needed. And now the HOA itself was weaponized against me. Lawyers cost more than I could afford, my farm was suffering, and my sanity was unraveling. I barely slept. Any truck noise sent me into fight or flight mode. I checked the mailbox constantly, taking photos and logging details like I was back in the military. documenting blast patterns. My girlfriend Sarah tried to be supportive, but it was wearing her down too. She'd find me at the table in the middle of the night, surrounded by notes and photos, trying to build a case that no authority seemed willing to hear. "This is eating you alive," she told me. "Maybe you should just sell and start over." Strangely enough, Madison echoed the same idea on her next visit, wrapped in concern for my mental health. She claimed neighbors were worried about me, that maybe a fresh start would be best. She even had buyers in Minda, people who specialized in rural land purchases, who wouldn't ask too many questions about why I wanted to sell fast. I wasn't ready to give in. Instead, I leaned on my training. I started documenting everything: dates, times, conversations, financial losses, building a file that no investigator could ignore. But I was still reacting, still on the defensive. I hadn't yet flipped the switch to offense. The turning point came when I caught Madison in a lie. She told me she was working with the county to increase patrols in our area, but when I called the sheriff's office, they had no record of any collaboration with our HOA. No patrols, no communication, nothing. She had been feeding me fabricated stories about official support that never existed. And then came the conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I was working in the barn when Madison pulled up to meet Victor near the property line. They assumed I was inside, but in the quiet of the countryside, voices carry. Madison was giving Victor a timeline, something about development deadlines and needing to clear out problem properties before a cut-off date. Victor admitted they were behind schedule and needed to speed things up. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about harassment. It wasn't even just about me. It was a coordinated push, tied to bigger interests, maybe developers eyeing the land. My little mailbox war was just a small piece of something much larger. Madison wasn't some overzealous HOA president, she was part of a calculated land grab. What chilled me most, though, was realizing she'd been digging into my personal history. Somehow, she had learned details about my grandfather's will, and that terrified me, because what nobody else knew, not even Sama, was that my grandfather's original land grant from the 1940s came with rare, valuable rights attached. Mineral rights, easement access, things most HOAs never accounted for, and suddenly it all made sense why they weren't just trying to run me off, they were after something much bigger. My grandfather's land came with exemptions that most people didn't even realize existed, a special rights grandfathered in from decades ago. If Madison was digging into that paperwork, it meant she wasn't just trying to push me into selling, she was searching for a legal loophole she could exploit to challenge my right to even live there. That realization flipped the switch in me. This wasn't about property values or neighborhood standards anymore. This was a full-scale attempt to steal my family's legacy by using bureaucracy and harassment as weapons. My grandfather had poured his life into this land, leaving something lasting for his children and grandchildren, and now some suburban power player thought she could strip it away with legal trickery. Here's the thing. When you threaten a combat veteran's home, the one place where he finally feels safe, you don't get a polite fight. You wake up the soldier that never really went away. That night I made my choice. No more playing defense. No more hoping the system would swoop in to protect me. From now on, I was going on the offensive. The next morning, I called Sam over for coffee. We sat on the porch overlooking the land my grandfather left me, and I finally told him the part of my story I'd kept quiet. I was a not specialist at explosive ordnance disposal. 10 years in the military, disarming bombs and clearing routes in places where failure wasn't an option. Sam let out a low whistle and shook his head. "No wonder you've been so methodical about this," he said. "That training never leaves you." He was right. I'd been treating the whole ordeal like battlefield intelligence, tracking patterns, collecting evidence, documenting everything. But I had been doing it defensively, like I was waiting for someone else to intervene. That was about to change. "Sam," I asked him, "if someone was destroying your property, using local government against you, and digging for ways to take your land, a broken bar, what would you do?" He held my gaze for a long moment before answering. "Son, sometimes good people have to use hard methods to fight corruption. Just make sure whatever you do is legal, documented, and airtight." That afternoon, I started planning an intelligence operation like my little corner of Texas had never seen. First, I needed to map out exactly what I was up against. Over the next week, I followed Madison and Victor. Madison made frequent trips to the county courthouse, always with official-looking paperwork, slipping into areas the public wasn't usually allowed. Victor, meanwhile, cruised rural back roads, stopping to take photos and jot down notes, scouting other properties the way he had mine. Then came the breakthrough. I tailed Madison to a meeting at a restaurant on the edge of town. 3 men in expensive suits joined her. Through my optics, I watched them lay out property maps across the table. They pointed to parcels, including mine. One of them slid her a thick envelope, and I watched Madison count the cash before shaking hands. That sealed it. Madison wasn't just a corrupt HOA president, she was a paid operative, working with developers willing to bankroll harassment campaigns to secure land. My ruined mailboxes were just a tiny piece of a much bigger operation, and that's when I knew what I had to build. Mailbox number 5. But this wasn't going to be another stronger box they could smash with a bigger truck. This was going to be my weapon, an intelligence-gathering trap disguised as a desperate rancher's overbuilt mailbox. I spent 2 weeks working nights in my shop, crafting what looked like the most paranoid mailbox in Texas history. Heavy wooden posts, steel plates, a 4-foot-deep concrete base. From the outside, it screamed overkill, but hidden inside that box was $15,000 worth of military surplus gear, motion sensors, night vision cameras, directional mix, GPS trackers, solar-powered data systems, and encrypted uploaders. Everything was designed to gather intel and preserve evidence automatically. I even built what I called the evidence cascade. If the mailbox took a hard hit, hidden compartments would spring open and scatter documents across the ground, copies of HOA records, financial logs, and communication evidence linking Madison and Victor to harassment. Anyone arriving at the scene would see more than a broken mailbox if they'd see the paper trail of corruption exposed. Meanwhile, Madison escalated her campaign. Every week brought fresh violations. My chicken coop was too close to the property line, my garden out of compliance with landscaping standards, my workshop lacking architectural approval. In 30 days, I racked up over $2,000 in fines, all carrying Madison's signature with Victor's notes attached. They didn't stop there. Madison began sending new inspectors around, people asking invasive questions about my schedule, my income, and my long-term plans. Victor had gotten bolder too, parking his truck across my driveway, blocking me in, showing up during dinner, claiming security checks. Every move was designed to wear me down. The pressure was real, but I no longer saw myself as the victim. Every interaction was an intelligence opportunity. Every fine, every question, every visit was a piece of their operation I could map and counter. Because while they thought they were closing in on me, I was already setting the trap. I kept up the act of being the overwhelmed homeowner, but in reality, my mindset had shifted completely. I was running an operation now, not just defending my property. I began feeding Madison carefully chosen bits of information, setting the stage for her next move. When she came by for her next so-called welfare check, I casually mentioned I was expecting a shipment of rare breeding chickens the following Monday. I made it sound like the delivery was critical, worth over $3,000 and essential to keeping my farm financially afloat. I made sure she understood this was my lifeline. The night before the delivery, I finalized my setup. Every component of my surveillance and defense system was tested: motion detection, audio capture, video recording, GPS trackers, evidence scatter deployment, automatic data uploads, and even an alert system that would notify Sam while backing everything up to secure cloud storage. My house had become mission control. That Sunday night, I sat in my kitchen with night vision optics, watching the mailbox like it was an enemy outpost. Tomorrow would prove whether months of careful work were genius or insanity. Sure enough, just after midnight, headlights appeared of Victor's truck creeping up the road in the dark. Behind him, Madison's SUV, and another unfamiliar vehicle. They parked 100 yards out, huddled together for what looked like a strategy session. Then Victor grabbed a sledgehammer and strutted toward my mailbox like it was about to be his next easy win. Madison stayed back, clearly supervising. Victor swung that hammer like he was staring down a condemned building. Instead of splintering, The mailbox sent the sledgehammer bouncing back like he'd just tried breaking into Fort Knox with a toy mallet. The confusion on his face was priceless, like physics itself had betrayed him. But that was just round one. My mailbox wasn't just a reinforced box, it was a trap designed to strike back. The floodlights snapped on, blasting the night and blinding anyone whose eyes had adjusted to the dark. Victor staggered, half blind, like he'd just been flashbanged. From her SUV, Madison shouted into her phone. Through my listening gear, I caught pieces of her panicked words. "It didn't work. A broken bar. No, he's fine. But this is way beyond what we agreed to. A broken bar." Whoever was on the other end wasn't happy. Meanwhile, the GPS trackers deployed perfectly. As soon as Victor's hammer's truck, spring-loaded devices launched and latched onto his truck with industrial magnets. From now on, every mile he drove would be recorded. The evidence cascade system triggered too, scattering HOA documents, financial records, and payment logs in a 30-foot radius. It looked like someone had set off the most organized paper bomb in history. Victor scrambled to collect them, but with the floodlights blazing, he couldn't tell what he was grabbing and what he was leaving behind. Not that it mattered, everything was already duplicated and uploading to secure servers. Right on cue, Sam arrived in his truck, headlights sweeping across the chaos. He climbed out, calm and deliberate, like he was responding to a disturbance call. "Evening," he said evenly. "Heard some noise." "Everything all right out here?" Madison pounced on the chance to spin it. "Just helping our neighbor deal with another vandalism incident," she said, gesturing toward Victor, who looked ridiculous stumbling around with a sledgehammer in hand. Sam's expression told me he wasn't buying a word of it. He looked from Victor, to the undamaged mailbox, to the incriminating documents scattered everywhere. "So let me get this straight," he said slowly. "The supposed vandalism victim's mailbox looks brand new, while the man holding a demolition tool is standing in the middle of all this paperwork. Care to explain that?" Victor, panicked and flustered, blurted, "It's not normal. It's rigged with electronics. The damn thing attacked me." He waved his hammer at the mailbox like it was a living creature. Sam raised an eyebrow. "The mailbox attacked you, while you were investigating vandalism, with a sledgehammer?" At 1 in the morning, his tone dripped with disbelief as he pulled out his phone and started snapping photos. "That was my cue." I stepped outside in a bathrobe and boots, flashlight in hand, playing the startled homeowner who'd just been woken by the commotion. "What's happening out here?" I asked groggily. "Madison." "Victor? Why are you on my property in the middle of the night?" I played the role of the confused farmer perfectly, even though I had orchestrated every second of this scene. Madison tried one last desperate cover story, claiming someone had planted the documents to frame them. But Sam bent down, picked up a page, and read it under his flashlight. "This is an HOA expense report," he said, holding it up. "Payments made to Victor Hale Consulting at $800 a month. That's you, I assume?" Victor froze, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Madison tried to recover, but Sam was already pulling up more documents, reading them aloud. Each one was worse than the last. "Violation notices targeting my property, signed by Madison herself, and suspiciously large security upgrade expenses. Fraud leaves paper trails, and tonight, the trail was scattered all over my driveway." The scattered HOA paperwork painted a picture of targeted harassment against my property and neighbors' dues funding Victor's intimidation campaign. But the real payload wasn't on the ground, it was still hidden inside the mailbox itself. I had tucked away one more ace up my sleeve, a concealed audio system that had been recording every conversation within range of my land for weeks. That meant I had Madison and Victor on tape, plotting strategy, and even Madison's private calls with her mysterious contacts about development deadlines and land grabs. Victor was visibly unraveling, realizing the documents around him were damning enough. "This is just a mix-up," he stammered, trying to downplay it, but Madison shut him up with a single glare as she knew the hole they were in was already deep enough. That's when Deputy Sheriff Johnson arrived, answering Sam's call about suspicious late-night activity. The deputy didn't need long to size things up. Victor clutching a sledgehammer, Madison knee-deep in incriminating HOA papers, and my mailbox standing untouched despite obvious attempts to smash it. His questions cut straight to the heart of it. The most satisfying moment was watching Madison realize her polished concerned neighbor persona wouldn't charm a lawman who'd seen HOA fraud cases before. Johnson separated her and Victor, took their statements independently, bagged the scattered paperwork, and logged the sledgehammer as evidence of attempted property damage. One thing struck me as I watched it unfold. Madison wasn't scared about Victor's blue-eyes as she was terrified of the documents blowing in the wind. Her eyes never left them. That confirmed what I'd already pieced together. Weeks of quiet intelligence work had shown me Madison wasn't just an overbearing HOA president. She was also a struggling real estate agent who'd recently been tied to a company called Loner Development Group. Public records Sam dug up confirmed she had just become their listing agent. That stack of HOA papers, just the surface of something far bigger. While Johnson wrapped up his investigation that night, I was already moving ahead in my mind. Madison's anxiety wasn't really about HOA harassment being exposed. What she feared was someone connecting her side hustle to a broader development play. Over the next week, while she and Victor scrambled to deal with the fallout of their midnight stunt, I was quietly putting together the most complete fraud case our county had likely ever seen. With Sam's help, I combed through the HOA's ledgers and cross-checked every transaction. What emerged was a clear money trail. Madison signed off on bloated security consulting payments to Victoro 10 times above any market rate. Within days, Loner Development deposited money into Madison's real estate business. Shortly after, Madison greenlit another fat payout to Victor. It was a laundering loop disguised as neighborhood management. Loner bankrolled Madison through her agency. Madison funneled home money to Victor, and Victor pressured landowners into selling cheap. On paper, it looked like legitimate community security expenses. In reality, it was organized corruption. The one missing puzzle piece was who exactly controlled Loner and why they were so determined to grab up land in our rural area. That answer came faster than expected when Madison made her next miscalculation. 3 days after the failed mailbox demolition, she appeared at my door holding a bottle of wine, flashing a rehearsed smile. She called it a peace offering. Her pitch was simple: let's settle our differences quietly, without police or lawyers. She offered to pay for any damages, erase my HOA fines, even help me find buyers for my ranch if I still wanted to relocate. What she didn't realize was that my upgraded surveillance included directional mix covering the whole property. Every word she spoke was being captured and uploaded in real time. Madison's tone was sweet, but her real goal was obvious. She wanted to buy my silence. And in her eagerness, she revealed details she should never have known: information about my military service, my disability benefits, my girlfriend's job schedule, even records about my grandfather's original land grant that gave my ranch special rights others didn't have. She had clearly been digging into my background for leverage. Then she overplayed her hand. "Bruce, you've sacrificed enough. You don't need to deal with all this small-town politics. Maybe it's time to take those service benefits and move somewhere peaceful." She tried to wrap it in sympathy, but it was manipulation, and it showed she knew my financial details far too well. The real turning point came when her phone rang mid-conversation. Thinking she was out of earshot, she stepped off the porch and took the call. My microphones caught every word. "No, he's not selling. I already tried financial pressure. He's tougher than we thought. I know the deadline's close, but harassment isn't working." "A broken bar? What do you mean by other options?" "I don't want anything beyond property law." "A broken bar? Look, if we can't secure the Hayes place, the project collapses. It's the access parcel. Without it, your investors can't build." That was it. The reason for all the harassment. My ranch wasn't just another plot they wanted. It was the key to unlocking a much larger development. Without my land, their entire project was landlocked. After Madison left, I dug deeper. Property records, corporate filings, shell company chains, all pointing back to Loner Development. What emerged was a network designed to hide the real investors behind a multi-million-dollar construction plan. Sam, with his experience in municipal finance, confirmed what I suspected. "Son," he told me, "this is classic. You're describing a planned unit development, residential, commercial, the works. But projects like that need road access. If your land is the only viable entry point, then they can't build a thing without you. It all came together. Madison wasn't just a shady HOA president abusing her power. She was a paid pawn in a corporate land acquisition scheme, and my ranch was the linchpin. The scale of it all hit me hard. This wasn't a petty HOA feud anymore. It was about reshaping our entire community for profit. Madison was just the local face of something much larger. She'd been feeding Victor home money to rough up landowners, while Loner kept her afloat financially through her real estate firm. But behind Loner were developers with millions on the line, and their entire project hinged on one thing: controlling my ranch. Without it, the whole planned unit development collapsed before it could even start. Sam helped me understand the bigger picture. These developers don't just want dirt, they want infrastructure, he explained. They need your property for road access. No access, no project. That's why they're desperate. Suddenly, everything Madison had done made sense. The fake violations, the fines, the harassment campaigns, they weren't personal attacks. They were tactics in a calculated corporate playbook, and Madison's role wasn't about neighborhood leadership at all. She was being paid to make me so miserable I'd sell out cheap. But instead of breaking me, every scheme they ran only gave me more evidence. Madison thought she was orchestrating a land grab. What she didn't realize was that she was also building the foundation of the fraud case that would bring Hira and Loner down.